A state parliamentary committee will consider making all Queenslanders organ donors unless they opt out of the scheme. According to Premier Anna Bligh, under the current opt-in arrangement, only 21% of Queenslanders are registered to donate. This new approach could help save many lives. My next guest knows only too well the importance of organ donation. A few years ago, he was the recipient of a new heart. Let's hear his story. Darren at Madigan, good morning and welcome to ABC Southern Queensland.
Good morning, Belinda.
Nice to have you with us. Now, why did you need a new heart?
Well, I was actually travelling on a business trip up through northern Queensland at the time and had two major heart attacks in the space of a week and, may as well say it pretty much destroyed my heart. And about 4 or 5 months later, had a third minor heart attack, and that was pretty much it. I wasn't going to last much longer, so I was placed on the heart transplant waiting list.
And of course, when people think about heart attacks, they probably think of those that have them at an older age, 50s perhaps, certainly not at the age that you were.
No, I was 33 at the time, and it was just an amazing experience for about the following year, just going through the whole process of going through that terrible dying process, which I was terminal with terminal heart failure at the time, and eventually getting that heart basically in the nick of time.
So without organ donation, you would not be here?
Absolutely. They caught me with probably only just a few weeks left to live. And when you get to that stage, especially with heart failure, you can basically go to sleep one night and not wake up.
Does it cross your mind that if you were born 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, that they just wouldn't be able to do anything?
Oh, look, if you were actually born, let's say about 25 years ago, a bit over 25 years ago, that would have been the case. Even though transplantation was the very late 60s with Christian Barnard, they'd pretty much come to a halt during the late 70s because people were dying of rejection. And when what we like to call the miracle drug came along, cyclosporin, which is an anti-rejection drug, all of a sudden transplantation was able to start taking place again with wonderful success rates.
How long did you wait?
I was officially on the list for 6 months. I started off waiting for a heart and double lung transplant, and eventually my condition got to the point where they were able to get by with just doing a heart transplant. But it was around about officially 6 months on the list. But, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And when I went back and spoke to some doctors I was being treated by earlier on in the piece, they pretty much knew after the first week or so, after those first two heart attacks, that I was going to eventually need one.
Now, that must be an amazing experience because it's really not like any other when it comes to a terminal illness, waiting on a waiting list, because it's not like, for example, terminal cancer where the doctors say to you, there is nothing more we can do. You are literally waiting for that lifeline.
Well, that's right. You have a few. You have the odd false alarm. There's also the other aspect with terminal heart failure where, unlike cancer, where there may be that possibility of remission, it's just not going to happen. You're going to die. I mean, the heart doesn't regenerate. It can't fix itself or anything like that. So you do go through every minute of the day knowing that you are going to die. It's pretty much a death sentence, unless you are a candidate for transplant. Unfortunately, in this country, and I guess this is what we're discussing at the moment, is the lack of organ donors on the register. And it is a real major problem. We have this terrible contradiction in this country where we have just the most wonderful transplant physicians, some of the very best in the world and some of the very top success rates, and yet we have some of the worst, if not the worst, organ donors on the donor register in the Western world.
So what do you think tipped the scales towards you when doctors decided this is the person that we're going to give one of the 21% organs of the Australian population that we have?
It's not through. When actually the term list is actually a bit of a misnomer. What it comes down, that gives the impression of order. There is no order. What it basically comes down to is matching, and the person who is the sickest person that can match with that particular organ at the time. Unfortunately, we talk about a transplant list quite often, and that gives the impression that there's some sort of an order and you're sitting on a certain part of the list. That's not the case. If there are 2 or 3 people that can match with a particular organ at a given time, it's usually the person who is the sickest and is likely to survive the operation that will get that organ.
What do you think of this opt-out proposal?
On a personal level, look, I'm just ecstatic that they're exploring it. Pretty much every survey that's been done in the last 20 years or so has shown that well over 90% of Australians support organ donation. But I think there's this aspect of people. One of the things that endears us to people around the world is our laid-back attitude, and I think that probably is where we get hurt with this. In that there's a very much a "she'll be right, we'll worry about it when the time comes" sort of attitude. And unfortunately, on this issue, we can't do that because when the time comes, people are grieving. They're not really in a position to be making decisions, and at the end of the day, people's last wishes often aren't met.
But that's the thing. No one expects to have a heart attack at 33. No one expects to be involved in a major car accident. It just happens.
That's right. And look, can I just stress too that the whole point of this exercise is the mathematics are truly awful. Less than 1%, if you take all the people that die in any given year, less than 1% leave the body in a condition for transplantation. Now, after you get that tiny number, you need to look at the people who have actually consented and then take that even smaller number and then find a match. The mathematics are just awful, and that's why we're always trying to push this. Tell your friends and family what your wishes are, and most importantly, get on the list, Belinda. I mean, as you probably gathered, I've done a lot of media down through the years for this sort of thing, and I decided to just jump on the phone because every time I'd have a form thrown in front of me in my life, I'd sign it, yes, I'll be an organ donor, the driver's license, the whole bit, and I rang up and I'd slipped through the cracks and I wasn't actually on the register. Needless to say, I fixed that pretty quickly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, don't rely on the fact that you once ticked your driver's license.
The driver's license thing doesn't exist anymore.
That's right. It's not there. And when you get your renewal through, you'll actually find there's a form that they give to you with it to actually get on the register.
Okay. Interesting. And just finally, just from a interest point of view, do you know who donated the organ to you? Are you aware of its background, or is that completely anonymous? It's
pretty much completely anonymous. A lot of us do receive letters from families and we reply to those, but it's all done on a very vague and anonymous basis.
Darren, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
That's Darren Madigan, and if you recognise his voice, he's a broadcaster with the ABC's Grandstand team based at the Gold Coast.